far as threatening to strip ABC of its licenses for its stations. And this is really unprecedented. Licenses are not revoked unless there's some sort of egregious violation of FCC rules. And that's clearly not the case here. This is pure political intimidation, the sort of things we've seen in other countries and, say Eastern Europe, or when there's a coup and the new government comes in and tries to force certain networks off the air because they're not under the control of the government or not friendly to the government.
And former Voice of America White House Bureau Chief Steve Herman. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Darryl, how are you?
Very well, sir. Thank you for being with us. Loads going on in Washington this week. Doesn't feel very Augusty here or there, really. There's always just so much to keep us on our toes. And we should start with the Middle East, Steve. Donald Trump calling off peace talks with Iran over a commercial ship that was hit in the Strait of Hormuz, while Tehran launched 2 ballistic missiles towards UAE territory earlier today. We were hearing from some residents in the UAE who were getting those alerts to their phones telling them to be wary of missiles. Speaking to the media earlier today, Trump commented on threats to bomb Iran and if it interferes with US efforts to claim sovereignty over the vital oil waterway, the Straits of Hormuz.
No, I don't think they behaved very well, but we handle them very easily, just like we do other things.
That was yesterday, actually, wasn't it? Him talking about the Strait of Hormuz. Well, the negotiations are deadlocked. Tehran is refusing to reopen the strait unless Washington lifts its naval blockade and pulls troops out of the region. Around and around and around we go. Where are we tonight in terms of sort of like talks are concerned, Steve?
There are no talks that we're aware of. Now, there has been some diplomacy this week. The president's son-in-law, as you may have heard, met with Hamas in Egypt over the weekend and then was in Israel. So there is that sort of diplomacy going on. But I think really what we're seeing out of the White House now, at least the public messaging from the president, is all is well. There's nothing to see here. Which is obviously not true. And, the president is out there on social media putting out what is probably an attempt to distract from the real issues here by claiming or appearing to claim that the Strait of Hormuz is under U.S. control. And not only is it under U.S. control, according to the president, it's also now perhaps U.S. territory, which and the answer to both of those in reality is no. It is not under U.S. control. There are ships, the few that dare to try to transit it. There are some getting through, but others are being attacked. And obviously, the president cannot unilaterally declare that a body of water around the world, on the other side of the world, is suddenly part of the United States.
Yeah. No, that doesn't seem unreasonable. Have we heard anything from the White House or any kind of response after Iran launched these ballistic missiles towards the UAE?
I haven't seen anything. Now, you may remember that there was a comment yesterday by the president where he used an expletive to say what he was going to do to Oman if it got in the way. Oman, of course, has been very involved in quiet diplomacy, trying to settle things down. And it's just a big mess, I think, is something that anybody would agree with who's an objective observer of what's going on.
We were talking just about the midterms earlier and the primaries that are happening at the moment. Tuesday by Tuesday, there is a primary happening in America at the moment, isn't there? And sort of quite curious to see how this story in particular is bleeding into those primaries and what kind of indicator that gives us as to how it may bleed into November's midterms. What's your gut telling you? Your radars saying there, Steve, on that?
Well, my caveat is always, in regards to the primaries, not to read too much into them. You get out the loyalists in both parties, and they tend to go more towards the extreme, both in the rhetoric of the candidates and the response of the voters. And then in the general election, which will be in November, you have to come back more towards the middle. But the Republicans are acknowledging that they're probably going to lose the House of Representatives, and they're hoping to retain the Senate. But a lot can happen still. I would think that the Republicans need to be extremely worried if we still have the same situation in the Middle East, the same situation with the economy, and the same, including gas prices, by mid-October, when you start to see some early voting, and that's really going to be the absolutely critical period. There is still time for the president and Republicans to turn it around, although we're hearing about some frustration from Republican leaders in the president with his messaging and the fact that he's not really doing very much to help their candidates get elected in November.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Let's move on, because there's another story that it's not going to get loads of pick up in the UK. But it's bubbling and it is interesting because ABC, the media network, has launched a major lawsuit against the US Federal Communications Commission, that's the FCC in America, alleging that the agency...
So,
oh, sorry.
Yes.
Well, go on. You tell me the story, Steve. Go on.
Well, I was just going to give a little background on this. This has been festering for a while, where we have a head commissioner, the chief of the Federal Communications Commission, who was appointed by the president. There's only 3 commissioners now, 2 Republicans, 1 Democrat, who has been very aggressive and being
Carr.
The president's bulldog. Brendan Carr, yes, who is attacking broadcast entities in the United States who are perceived as being critical of the president, or having comedians on the air who may be critical of the president. And a number of the networks originally appeared to be appeasing Trump and Carr, and that seemed to only further motivate Brendan Carr to go after this one particular network, ABC. Now, the thing I think we need to explain is, even though Donald Trump says all the time that he wants to take the licenses away of the networks, networks are not licensed in the United States. Individual radio and television stations are licensed, and the big networks do own some broadcast stations. So it's the licenses of those individual stations that may be in jeopardy. And Carr is threatening to strip ABC of its licenses for its stations. And this is really unprecedented. Licenses are not revoked unless there's some sort of egregious violation of FCC rules, and that's clearly not the case here. This is pure political intimidation, the sort of things we've seen in other countries, and say Eastern Europe, or when there's a coup and the new government comes in and tries to force certain networks off the air because they're not under the control of the government or not friendly to the government.
And so, just to be clear here, we're talking.
So it's not.
Yeah, and just to be clear here, because I think there's another bit of the story which I think will sort of, those who aren't following close enough, will trigger our memory, which is Jimmy Kimmel, right? Because Jimmy Kimmel is a late night TV host. There was a big story.
That's part of it.
Yeah,
yes.
Big story about him. He works for ABC. He was put off the air. There was a joke that he told, or he made a sort of humorous, whether it was a joke or what he made, but he sort of, in one of his monologues, joked about and around the reaction to Charlie Kirk's death, didn't he?
Right, and it was a clumsy attempt at humor. He apologized, and he was briefly taken off the air. But the FCC commissioner has also complained about a morning daytime chat show called The View, which has several women as the co-hosts. And he also doesn't like that show. And this, I think most any objective lawyer or media commentator would agree, this is not the job of the head of the Federal Communications Commission.
Okay.
To be policing what may be interpreted as political speech on the airwaves.
Okay, and you say, Steve, that it's intimidation, is how you've described it, political intimidation of media outlets. And I suppose the idea is that it makes people second guess. It makes them think twice about the coverage that they do and the things they're saying, all that sort of stuff. Are you sort of seeing that happen? Are you feeling that in American media, that it's sort of being molded in Trump's image?
I can tell you from talking to colleagues who work for these major networks in the news departments, especially, that there is second guessing, and CBS has someone now new in charge of the news division, Barry Weiss, you may have heard of, who is seen as more sympathetic to the president and is turning the hallowed 60 Minutes Sunday evening investigative reporting show upside down. And NBC is also had its issues.
Okay, can I ask you this question, Steve? I'd like to put this point to you just quite directly, because I'm curious to hear what your argument about this is, because there are some sort of people are supportive of that, or people around Donald Trump will make the argument that American media, or all media, is liberal and is too liberal, has been liberal for too long, and what he is attempting to achieve here is a corrective.
I disagree. Yes. You could argue, if you are a Republican, that these broadcasts tend to be sympathetic to the Democratic point of view more often than not. However, you have Fox News, you have One America News, you have Newsmax, which are solidly conservative and would be described by people on the left as mouthpieces of Donald Trump. So it works both ways. And of course, National Public Radio, NPR, has also been a target, as well as the public broadcasting system, PBS, which are non-commercial, non-profit, and are also accused of leaning towards the left. But whether a network, a newscast, leans to the left or leans to the right or is in the center, and that's sometimes in the eye of the beholder, that's not illegal. That is no reason for the Federal Communications Commission to threaten broadcast licenses.
Right. So, do you know, it's a really compelling argument, that, isn't it? Is that it doesn't matter what you think about the American media landscape, because there's no law to prevent it being a certain way. And actually, I suppose the laws that protect conservative speech, in theory, protect left and liberal speech. And so those two things there's a yin and a yang involved in those two things, isn't there?
Well, yes, but there are corrective mechanisms. And we saw that with the case of Dominion, the voting machine company, which sued Fox News. Part of that when Donald Trump was claiming that the 2020 election was rigged. And so we do have a standard here. If you are proven to have a reckless disregard for the truth, you can be successfully sued. So it's not that we have like total anarchy on the airwaves, that you can say and do anything you want. There are standards if you do have a broadcast license.
Yeah, okay. And Donald Trump is suing the BBC as well at the moment, of course, which is...
Yes, that's right.
Part of the thread to that story. Okay, listen, Steve, we are out of time, my friend, but it's good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Steve Herman, who is former Voice of America White House bureau chief, with us on the Trump Dump on Times Radio tonight.